I wish we had in Germany some of your British attitude, this can-do attitude and a very optimistic attitude towards technology and towards artificial intelligence. And you mentioned also in your remarks that, the daily briefings, I used to watch them actually last year with Sir Patrick Vallance and Professor Chris Whitty. And I think Patrick talked also about it, about this change in attitude in the British government and the way, they view science and the increasing weight of science in political decisions. Now we move on to our next topic and our next panel. Now we're going to talk about something else entirely, and that is using data science, using artificial intelligence in the area of banking. AI and big data have a huge role and a huge potential in the banking sector, and they can add value to customers. They can simplify processes, and this is exactly what we are going to talk about. We have an expert panel of people working in this sector, and my colleague, my friend Lisa Sommer from SAP will moderate the discussion. Lisa, thank you very much, and thank you for the panelists for being here, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Nabil. So very warm welcome here on Harry Sullivan's stage to our panel discussion around big data in the financial sector. Our discussion here will be held in a format of a virtual chat. So you see the speakers and myself. My name is Lisa Sommer. I will be the moderator for this session here. And if you do have questions during our conversation, of course, you can write that in the chat, and then we'll keep some minutes in the end so that we can pick up your questions. We have amazing guests here today, and I'm really excited. And I would like to extend my warm welcome here to our participants. We have Mrs. Lina Weichbrodt, who is the lead machine engineer at Deutsche Kreditbank. Then we have Lukas Mazánek, who is the head of data and information competence center at Raiffeisenbank. We have Mr. Oliver Maspfuhl, who is lead data scientist for big data and advanced analytics at Commerzbank. And from PROFINIT, we have Mr. Lukas Dvorak, working as development manager for big data and data science business. So we're talking about the finance sector, and at its core, I would say finance companies are already data administrators. They are data processors, they're risk managers. It's not that new for a bank to work with big data, I would say. But also, most of the data that you're working with is already available digitally. So still, I would want to argue that maybe banks are not in the very, very forefront of being a thought leader for AI, for example. Lukas, you're working with many banks and you help them to digitalize, you help them to leverage the potential in big data. What's the current situation there? Why are so many banks struggling with using artificial intelligence with their data, for example?
Great question. Thank you very much for this one. We believe that actually banks are not really that much super struggling in using AI because it's a conservative environment and the current situation is even pushing. So we can see a huge rise of this project, maybe a little bit of effectivity, because on one hand, there is a huge potential in using AI and data science. On the other hand, it's not that easy to make it work right away. You need to build teams, which is complicated to build a competency within a bank. And obviously, this is a key thing. This is a strategic thing. So you want to build it in-house and you want to keep it as your know-how and build a team which can produce you new solutions, some competitive advantage takes really years. It's not really easy. So this is not like we can start to do something and we can put it in production some kind of a startup. It's still a bank. You have a lot of processes. You have to be very careful about security. You have to be very careful about how you use the data, and it's just one side of everything. So and then you need to process it within the let's say the project plan and to do programs. Data science project or AI project, it's still kind of about research and development, right? So it's more risky from the point of view of the project management. These projects are more risky. So it takes a little bit different approach you have to apply. For this, it's more like cherry picking of something that might be successful, but you will have a lot of projects that will not be successful. Actually, gardeners are saying it's like some 1 year old research saying 60% of models within the industry will not go to production, which seems like more than a half, like a lot. From the perspective of research and development from the academic sphere, it's actually quite a high number. 40% successful project is good, but you are in a bank, you are in the business environment, and you want success. So for this, banks started to put methodologies into process, taking experience from outside, because their teams, their data science teams in bank, they should bring insights and innovation, but also they need to do the operation, and they need to deal with the complicated banking environment, very complex processes. So you also need to take the experience from outside, connect it with your data knowledge, and develop the tech stack. And what is most important, like really deal with the risk, connect it, use iterative approach, and use some successful concepts which work somewhere else already tried and effective. And this is what is happening right now. It's actually very fast. The current situation is speeding it up, and I'm really excited, because in 2 or 3 years, I believe that there will be a huge change. We will see a huge change in how banks are serving their clients.
I would love to pick up that you said like the 40-60% thing. I mean, yeah, also from my experience, often like when you start such a machine learning project, for example, you can't exactly tell if it's going to be successful or not in the end. And that often scares people, that you don't know exactly about the result. But is there like factors? I think Lina has a lot of experience here. Like what would make an AI use case a good use case? That is a promising one, and that will also make it to production then.
Yeah, the most important thing, what I believe, and we are always using that kind of approach, that you need to set the goal, you need to set how you're going to measure it. KPIs very strict. Like a lot of projects are, we try this to get some insights. We try to be able to use our clients' data, for example. Like, is this really something you can measure? So first thing you should think about how you're gonna measure it. If you find a way how you're gonna measure success, it's actually a very good start. And then do it, measure it, and iteratively improve it. So you will see some progresses, and things that are just not going to be successful, you actually find out very early in first, second iteration. Project that will be successful will go for years, and it will iteratively improve, involve more data, because this is how it has to be done. Like, it's not like something like a routine projects, like building data warehouse is something which is here 15, 20 years, and everybody knows already. Data science is new.
Trying to turn my head towards Lina. Is that something that you can confirm? Lina, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, definitely. A clear success criterion is one thing. Another way to reduce this risk of only delivering a part of the projects is to take existing projects that are already an important business case. If you start a project, a completely new project, we need to do everything. We need to integrate it with other systems. We need to define how to measure it. We need to collect more data that doesn't exist yet. So to reduce risk and to increase speed of delivery, it's very good to look at your existing business cases, pick the ones that are very important or bring a lot of money or cost a lot, and think about if it makes sense to apply AI here to make it even more efficient or cost efficient. That's one way to reduce the risk. There's also some other criteria I could go into if you'd like to hear more on the selection strategy. That would be one point. Pick an existing great business case.
I would love to make it a little bit more tangible. Can you give us an example of what would be a good use case so that our audience understands, like, what exactly are we here talking about? What would be something that I have maybe experienced already?
Fraud detection is a classic example. You probably, if you're in a bank, you already have a fraud detection system. That's a very good candidate to look at. Does it take a lot of time? Is there a big team behind it that manually checking fraudulent transactions? Could an AI model pre-select them better? That's one example. If we go in different industries, classical examples for AI where it works especially well is language. So, for example, what we have in production is an email routing system. It used to work with very basic rules like match words. So if the word wire transaction is in there, it would be routed to this department. And now you can, for example, NLP, natural language processing, is an excellent candidate to use with AI models. So you already have a system. You can measure how much employees' time is spent on routing these emails manually, just as an example case. And here you can quantify it. Okay, what's our target? Like Lukas said, is the target, for example, the total time until the email of the customer is answered. And then you can already have a target KPI, you know how much money you can save if these people could reply faster, for example. So this is an excellent example. So images is another good use case, or personalization. So there's a handful of good use cases, and then you look at your important business cases and validate.
Yeah, that now really makes it like, now I can understand what are the exact things where we can, like, this is more like internal efficiency, I would say. A lot of things, for example, your email use case is a very clear internal efficiency thing. I would love to hear some more from Oliver, because I know that at Commerzbank they're actually very far also with some of those really cool use cases.
Yes, of course, we have a lot of use cases. If you allow, I would nevertheless not restrict myself to give a list of our use cases, but maybe also try to give an answer to the first question you asked. But let's start with some use cases, or just some areas where we have use cases. Yeah, it's clearly for internal efficiency. So document recognition. Yesterday, Dominik Schmidt-Kiefer has presented one use case in risk management, where we classify a transaction text, for instance, for risk management purposes. We have other use cases. We have a chatbot, for instance, for internal efficiency. That we have, you mentioned fraud. Lina, we have a cutting-edge fraud detection system in place. I think, well, we have been having this in place for, I think, at least 5 or 6 years now, both for the credit fraud side, but also for the transactional fraud side. I think we have use cases in every direction, every activity we have. But to come back to the first question you asked, why is banking not in the forefront? I think there's no shortage of possibilities of using machine learning and data analytics in banks. And actually, banks have been using machine learning ever since Basel II has been introduced in 2006. Yeah, so rating models are machine learning models. And of course, they're being improved now by using more advanced techniques. For instance, to leverage external data sets and so. But what are some of the non-trivial problems by using machine learning in banks? I think that might be an interesting point, because it's often overlooked. People say, yeah, you have a legacy IT infrastructure. That's true, because you have to put things to production. Now, you cannot just build a model. That does not help. You have to put it to production. And our central unit, the Big Data Advanced Analytics unit, is now a unit that takes our use cases to production and operates them also. It's not just the modeling part. It's really goes to the operations. That's very important, but it's very, very time consuming. So it takes you, we have, for instance, a use case where we automatically scan hundreds of thousands of newspaper articles every day and serve them to our risk managers. This use case, we built a prototype in 3 months. Taking this in a performant infrastructure in the cloud took us a year. Because also we were front runners. I think Dominic explained that yesterday. That was the first time we did that, and did a lot of groundwork also. So of course, you have these problems. There's the infrastructure. Then you have, of course, you have to train people. You cannot just build your ideal teams. You have to work with people that are there. You have to make them. You have to integrate everybody in this transformation. And you have regulation, of course, which you also have to respect. For instance, when we speak about rating models, but there are also intrinsic problems which are often overlooked. If you look at the successes of machine learning or AI, they are mostly built around things like image recognition, speech and text recognition, and so on. These use cases have a special kind of structure. They are related to very smooth data sets in very high dimensions, of course. But in a banking context, you very often have the problem that you have structured data, highly non-smooth, so categorical. They suffer from data problems. They are not. You don't have them in giant quantities. So they are, would say, rather at a terabyte scale, so medium-sized data sets. And you very often are confronted with forecasting problems, and you have a risk dimension. So these two aspects, forecasting and risk management, it is not sufficient to just give an estimate of a mean. You also need to describe the distribution. That makes the machine learning task much more complicated. And that's something that is not present in other people, even in other areas. Even in autonomous driving, for instance, you don't make a risk management for pedestrian recognition, for instance. It just has to work in 99.9999% of the cases. In banking, you never have such a precision. It's just impossible. So you have to manage the uncertainties. And of course, you also need transparency, because you have to explain to a customer, for instance, a credit decision. So these 3 dimensions make it much more complicated in a banking context to leverage AI as it can be done in all the areas which are related to image recognition and speech and text recognition.
I would love to pick up on the last thing that you said. You want to, towards your customer, you still want to be individual. You want to make sure that it doesn't in the end appear as a machine learning service that they're getting. And I know that at Raiffeisenbank, there is already some use cases where it's really directed towards a good customer service. But how can we make sure that the customer service still remains personal?
Yeah.
So, Lukas.
Thank you for the question. We have quite a few use cases for AI. We started in retail, mostly because there is basically enough data. So we started with propensity modeling and also installment classification. And we struggle a little bit with the security issues and safety of our customers' data, because we value the safety of the data of our customers most, and this is slowing us down a little bit. Also, using cloud services is regulated, at least in Czech Republic. It wasn't easy to get in the cloud at all, but finally we are there, so we just started. And while the personalization is always a big task, we obviously classify our customers to some segments, and we are looking for similarities, and so we can propose better services for our customers, because the more we understand their needs, the more we can provide to them, and we can uplift customer experience. So that's basically our strategy.
And you mentioned that for me as customer, for example, my data privacy, of course, is important, and I do want to make sure that my data being there is in good hands and that it's not like overly or misused or something. But despite of those concerns about data privacy, there's another concern that often comes up with machine learning. That's also ethics. And I know that at GKB, you also picked up that topic. We as SAP also have our machine learning ethics guidelines there. What can you do? How it should feel? But Lina, I guess you can also talk about ethics here.
So obviously this is a very, very important topic to everyone. And it's also, as a good news, under a lot of active research. So fairness in AI is a topic that also academia and big companies like Google spend a lot of time on researching how to do properly. And there have been some outcomes so far that companies can apply when they run AI to prevent major risks. So one thing you can do, for example, is use a two-tiered approach. So first there's an AI system, and then there's a human that can do possible post corrections. I give some examples. For example, when there's a fraud detection system that pre-classifies high-risk transaction, and then there's a department that manually checks which of these transactions are indeed fraud. So if there's a possibility to say either the very clear cases are decided by AI and measured, and the maybe questionable cases or all cases can be decided by a human. So that's one way to go about it, to have sort of a mixed approach, human and AI. Another way, of course, is to use the AI in ways which are inherently non-risky. So if I say email routing, there's not much that can go wrong. It can take maybe a bit longer. One person has to forward the email a bit longer. So there's lots of different ways how AI can be used responsibly by applying some of these techniques. So another example would be what we do in some of our use cases is we constantly monitor the performance of the model. So for example, the department can say the margin of error that we want to have in this use case, so the amounts of error that are allowed to happen, are this high and no more. So what we also, like other colleagues here said, we operate the AI systems in-house by our own teams. So we will get alerts. I will get an SMS on my phone. Oh, there's a problem here. The following actions were taken. Immediately someone is looking into the problem. So you can have ongoing monitoring in terms of the performance. If you can be very sure that there are no errors, or only a very slow acceptable amount of errors in the use case, that's one way to ensure that no negative downside, like objective measuring, let's say. So depending on the use case, you have the truth of what should have been the outcome. So where should the email have gone? Was this fraud? So you can, in real time, observe the performance of such model, and that can make me be confident to say these models are actually doing exactly what they're supposed to do and not anything else. So this is quite brief. There are some other measurements. For example, we are all aware that, especially in the US, there were some algorithms, for example, with face detection that worked a lot worse on, let's say, Black people. And then there's quite an outcry because obviously the training set was not representative, not including people from the Black population. So what you can also do is you can monitor on certain subgroups of your data in the banking system that might be, you don't want to be unfair to self-employed people, or you want to make sure that women don't get a worse prediction quality. So there's also this idea of don't measure on the aggregate, but also measure on subgroups that you want to observe. So this is just 3 examples. As you can tell, I'm speaking a bit quickly. There's like a very long list of measurements that are potentially applicable to the problem. So the AI expert would know what's the best way to ensure the risk, while also talking to the corresponding people from the department who know from a non-technical domain, what is their risk and how can we ensure that the worst case from their perspective, I'm encoding this in code to measure their concerns. So when they say, oh, I'm very afraid we would lose this could happen, then I encode that in code to make sure if this would ever happen, that we would definitely know. Just to give you some concrete examples.
I would love to pick up on the last one, the people from the department. I think that is a very, very important thing here, because it's not only that now we have a team of data scientists in our company and they will do everything. And the business user don't need to know about. And I think like at Raiffeisenbank, there's also like big activities that you really include the whole company in this transition, and that you take people by the hand, that machine learning is something that supports you, but it will not take over the whole business and so on. So maybe Lukas, you can talk a little bit about how do you make sure that that this is actually something that is for the whole company, and that people are accompanied with this change.
Yeah, well, we value customer experience very much. So we would like to avoid like big mistakes. And unfortunately, AI in the state where it is right now, it is very good in big numbers, but when it makes an error, it's a big error. And we need to avoid such errors. So as Lina pointed out, we use combination of artificial intelligence and our own employee expertise, and we combine it together to get the best results. And I believe it was proven even in the previous Berlin conference, where there were some surgeons who they used artificial intelligence for lung cancer detection, but they had to combine it with live surgeons to get the best results, because they needed to prevent big mistakes, and that's our approach.
And Lukas, like as you have seen different banks from the inside, is that something where you also go into consulting when you tell them we're going to do an AI project here, but it's not only about training a machine learning model, it's about much more than that? Is that something that you would also like tell your customers, like, watch out, it's not just a quick ML model and its efficiency?
Yeah, of course, it's never only about modeling, and you cannot deliver the magic box which will do everything. And those projects, or let's say this transformation using more data and using more modeling and stuff, it's actually change of the whole approach. It's change of mindset of people, and we need to realize one thing: like, what is really hot now? We have client who is going to bank, but now we have more client who is communicate with a bank via, I don't know, internet banking, mobile application, different channels, digital channels. So now you are not dealing with just a customer, but with a digital twin of a customer. And then you have a lot of data, and you can use it for a lot of use cases, like Lukáš was mentioning, installment detection, helping people to get better loan offers under better conditions, or some propensity modeling for different products, to get the personalization of experience. Like this is really what banks are up to now, the personalization of experience. And for that, this is not just a model, this is the whole process, how you communicate with the customer. And at the end, the one you are communicating with is a real person, a warm person. You don't want to, I don't know, do the mortgage with a machine, right? You don't want to make a new investment with a machine. Like, this is something which is supportive, but at the end it has to be someone who is using those tools well. And the processes in banks are actually changing now. So what people were doing sometimes before are done by machines, same as we start to use calculators and computers for emailing instead of the post office. So now there are more examples where you can use it, like, for example, find the right offer at the right time for the right customer. But who is doing the offer? Who is communicating with the customer, who is avoiding those errors and mistakes, it has to be a human, right? So this is really what's going on now.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. But still, I mean, me as a customer, in order to understand me and to give like the best possible service, it's not only about the data that you as a bank have from me. It's actually more than that. You should also get the 360 perspective in here. Is there any activities to bring in external data as well? Can anyone comment on this one?
Well, maybe I can. Basically, in Czech Republic, it is a very good situation with external registers, like register of companies. And this gives us possibility to almost automate onboarding for corporate clients. So, and this helps the data quality, this helps the customer experience, it saves the money. So it's good for everyone. And for retail, obviously we can see what our customer is doing on our websites, in meaning watching in which product or what he is missing, and we can immediately provide such a product. So this is how we can personalize the experience of the customer.
Understood. But when it comes to bringing together data, and especially in the banking sector, I know that in Germany there's something like financial big data cluster, an initiative like that. And there is now also a research project called SAFE FBGC. And I know that Commerzbank is part of that. And I would love to understand, because when I prepped for this session, I came across that. I was like, okay, what does that exactly mean? What kind of data is collected there?
Yeah, I can give a comment on that. So SAFE FBGC is not primarily about customer experience. So I'm not sure we really, for customer experience, you really need much data from outside. Let's say from social networks and so. I don't know if customers would like that banks to look into their LinkedIn or Facebook accounts. I don't know. Maybe some would. I don't know. But I think with we have transaction data. If people allow us to look into transaction data, then we already know a lot about the economic reality, and you can infer a lot of things and offer a lot of services. You can really help people manage their finances in a quite different way. Leverage everything you have in the bank, all the treasury, all the risk management facilities you have. You can leverage that for individual clients, and that gives enormous opportunities to serve customers better and help people really to have better management of their finance. But let's come back to your question of the SAFE FBGC. This has a completely different scope at the moment. So the idea of FBGC is to bring together financial data, and it is one of the projects that should run on Gaia X. So we are a member of Gaia X too, and that's one project in that connection. But the SAFE FBGC is like I would not say a spin-off, but it's a project that has a very specific goal. Here we really want to have one use case, or one and a half, if you like, and show that it is in principle possible to bring data from different banks together. And there's one use case that is particularly interesting in that connection. That is the fight against money laundering and terrorism financing. And here it is pretty obvious that you have to pool data from different financial institutions, because that's the way money laundering works. Money is transferred over several institutions, and anti-money laundering efforts have been notoriously ineffective in the past. We know that. That's not the fault of the people who try to do that. But it is the problem is inherent in the fact that financial transactions are stored in silos in the banks, for good reasons, for banking secret and so on. That's important. But for this purpose of following money flows, to find patterns of abusive usage of the financial transaction system, this is a real impediment. And the SAFE FBGC is the project where we would like to create a shared infrastructure where we can share transaction data and considerably improve money laundering detection. So it is very hard to set up. You need to change legislation. You need to find a platform, maybe some trustee that operates it. So there are a lot of open questions, but that's in a nutshell what it is meant to.
And I absolutely do love the fact that we're coming back to an example where it's clearly obvious we're not bringing together data in order to analyze everything that's going on there, but we're in order to, for the good purpose. And money laundering is definitely an example where all of us are of big interest to detect such cases. And I think overall AI often is kind of like connected with, oh my God, like everything is automized and people are not in charge anymore. And we also in Bitcoin, we always try to like find good examples that ensures people that no, this is actually here to make things better, to make things easier, to make things more efficient, to help you in your daily life. And that's also what it shall do for employees in your companies, and that is also what it shall do for the customer service. For example, I mean, like picking up the example from Lina, if I write an email to DKB and I get the answer a day earlier than previously, it's a good thing. And I love the fact that there's some AI being used for it. So I think this is really a good example, and that's what we should keep in mind, that it's here to stay and it's here to do to help us with our daily work and to help us in customer service. I guess I would give a closing word to Lukas. Is that something that you would share and that you would want to leave our audience with as well?
What? Yeah.
Lukas, Dvorak.
Okay. Well, maybe I would like to pinpoint one thing that I heard here from Lina, and it's actually important. Now there is huge pressure on data science and machine learning teams in banks to do innovation, insight, and operations at the same time. And I believe that actually in the near future, they will become new apartments, machine learning operations, and it will be somehow like divided and split it and more effective.
Thank you very, very much for joining me here. I think for me at least, was very interesting. I learned a lot. I hope it was very interesting for our audience as well. If you would like to chat with us, there is that networking app. You can reach out to us on this app as well if you have questions. And for the rest, I wish you a wonderful afternoon with hopefully just as interesting discussion rounds and presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for having us.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you for having us. Goodbye.
Yeah.